Gender recognition reform, a key legal change promoted by the Scottish Government, but a divisive one. Shortly after MSPs voted through the changes just before Christmas, the UK Government said no. It blocked the proposed law, the first time it's done so in the history of devolution. Its justification? Fears over the potential impact on UK-wide equality laws. When she was First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon called this a democratic outrage and said she'd challenge it. Today, her successor, Humza Yousaf, has committed to taking the matter to the courts. Here's our political editor, Glenn Campbell.
The Gender Recognition Reform Scotland Bill is passed.
Cheers from some as Holyrood passes the bill to make it easier to legally change gender. From others, jeers. The UK government steps in, using a Section 35 order for the very first time to stop the bill becoming law. That's the decision the Scottish government is now challenging in court.
The UK government have led us with no other option but to seek the judicial review because they have not taken the opportunity to work with us to see whether there was a way it could be amended.
Are you wasting time and public money on what is essentially a lost cause?
Well, this is a situation we never wanted to get into. But if the UK government is going to veto a bill where the overwhelming majority of MSPs have supported it, I think it's very important that we stand up for the Parliament, the will of the Parliament, and stand up for Scottish democracy.
The UK government says it will robustly defend its action, arguing that Holyrood's reforms would adversely affect UK equality law and access to single-sex spaces.
There are concerns that have been raised in relation to women, girls and vulnerable people, and that's really where our focus should be. However, what we're seeing just now is we're seeing a First Minister who is more concentrated on causing division by stoking up division between the Scottish and UK parliaments.
The legal challenge is welcomed by trans rights campaigners.
The most important thing for us is that we want this bill to become law. We want trans men and women who are applying to update the sex on their birth certificate to be able to go through a much fairer and simpler process than they can at the moment, and that's used in many countries all around the world. And by challenging the UK government's block of the bill, as far as we can see, that is hopefully the quickest way that we might end up in a situation where the reality for trans people is that that process is much fairer for them.
Those who see gender reform as a threat to women's rights think the Scottish government's making a mistake.
It does seem remarkably foolish because this has obviously been a hugely divisive issue, not least for the SNP. It's wildly unpopular in the country as a whole, and it's widely predicted that they will lose.
This is a test case for the Scottish courts, with legal experts eagerly anticipating any ruling.
I think it's likely to be very significant. It will tell us something very important about how the courts view the status of devolution and view these kinds of ministerial intervention powers. As I say, never used before, but once a power has been used once, of course, it becomes easier to use it again.
Of the three candidates for First Minister, Humza Yousaf was always the most likely to go to court, a choice that risks prolonging one of Holyrood's biggest controversies.
Well, we can speak to Glenn now. And Glenn, this issue predates the current First Minister, but is his decision today now bringing things to a head?
Yes, remember Humza Yousaf came to power promising to prioritise things like NHS recovery and dealing with cost of living pressures, but in fact his first major decision is to approve a constitutional clash with the UK government in the courts over the decision-making power of this Parliament. And I think it's interesting he's framing it that way, presumably because he thinks that will have broader appeal than a straightforward defence of the gender reforms themselves, which divide public opinion and have caused significant divisions within political parties, not least the SNP. This issue prompted the biggest ever rebellion by SNP MSPs here at Holyrood. The candidate who came close to Humza Yousaf in the recent leadership contest, Kate Forbes, would not have been going to court. It's pretty unlikely that she would have pursued legal action. And tonight, the SNP MP, Joanna Cherry, is questioning the wisdom of taking legal action that she thinks, and remember, she's also a leading lawyer herself, legal action that she thinks is unlikely to succeed. In truth, we won't know the outcome for some time. Legal experts think it may be 18 months or more before this case reaches a conclusion.
OK, Glenn at Holyrood, thank you.